Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Foxy and this is Foxy Books and Planning, and it is the end of October, so it is time for another reading wrap up. So this is kind of my TBR type video that I do for booktube-ish pursuits, where I look over all the books I read in the month of October, the books I'm currently reading, if I've made any progress on them, if they were in my last follow-up, and talk about books that are on deck as the next in line to read whenever I finish something on the next or on the currently reading list. So to get started, we are doing completed books first, as always. So there's three segments to this. There's completed books, books in progress, and my on deck section, and I will try and remember to do what's the word I'm looking for? Timestamps down below in case you're just interested in one particular section. But typically the completed section is the largest section, the in progress is kind of the middle, and then the on deck is kind of a quick wrap up at the end. But all right, so let's get into our completed stuff. So the first book I have on my list, so my notes are over here, which is why you see this little page in the corner, was Camp Red Moon by R.L. Stine. This was a collection of 4 short stories that was one of the Audible free originals for Audible members for the month of October. I picked it because I wanted to use my 2 October month credits to buy kind of spooky Halloween-y things to kind of get me in the mood for Halloween. I gave this one 3 stars. I have honestly never read an R.L. Stine book until now, and I think it was one of those where I was like, I want to read this because I feel like I missed out on it as a child because I just missed that boat. And some of the stories were good, some of them were meh. But in general, it was a really good Audible original production, and I just wanted more out of the stories, but that's mainly because it's geared more towards kids instead of adults. The next book on the list is Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu, or apologies if I butchered that. The other Audible free original for the month that was Spooky. I gave it 5 stars. It is one of the earliest written vampire novellas. It actually comes before Dracula in kind of the vampire chronology, and I had never read it, so I figured I would pick this one up. I really loved this Audible production. It has, and of course I blank on all of their names, Rose Leslie and David Tennant in it, which really makes it. And once you read sort of some of the background to Carmilla, it kind of brings the story to an even greater light and makes it even more impactful than one would initially think it to be. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to I might do a longer review of it and doing like a 4 genre wrap-up video. So the next on my list is a physical book. I know, I actually read physical books on occasion. So I finally finished The 7.5 Lives of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. I gave this book 5 stars. It is a murder mystery with some science fiction-y elements. I really, really enjoyed this. I really want to already start rereading it because I'm one of those people that I want to reread mysteries once I know the answer to the whodunit, because I want to see how the author lays out the solution and gives you the hints early on to the solution. And I feel like with the complexity of this novel, it requires multiple rereads in order for you to get to it, and in order for you to see all of the I feel like you need to reread this book multiple times to get all of the I'm going to see if I can throw up the word that I can't seem to say today because it's really late and this video was supposed to be up already and I'm just now filming it. So take that as you will. Really complex plot, definitely needs multiple rereadings. I'm really excited to reread it again. I was super happy to have finished it this month though. Next, I finally finished my History of Sciences, Antiquity to 1700. Great course from Audible. The lecturer is Loris M. Princip. And I think I've said this before, I really enjoyed this. I learned a lot. I also really appreciated the further we got into the kind of recognizable science history when you get to Boyle and Newton and all of that stuff, where he really opens up, because Princip's kind of a specialist on Boyle. And hearing that stuff was really, really, really interesting, especially as he starts to tie back to now let's bring back the things that we learned earlier to explain where we are now. Highly, highly recommend it for anybody who really loves history. If you're a scientist who wants to know more of the background of how we got to where we are, or anyone who's just looking for something that would be perfect for like a commute, because each lecture is 30 minutes, which is about the time of like the average American commute. So if you have a long commute, this might be for you. The next book is The Good Neighbor, The Life and Work of Fred Rogers by Maxwell King. I did this as an audiobook from my library. I gave it 5 stars. It's a biography of Mr. Rogers. It's really, really interesting. It's written by a guy who had interactions with Fred Rogers, and the audiobook is read by LeVar Burton. It was great. I highly, highly recommend it for anybody who either grew up with Fred Rogers or has heard about Fred Rogers and has no idea what he is other than kind of the cultural touchstone of Mr. Rogers with the red sweater, but highly, highly recommend. The next book on my list is Blood of Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski, which is the official start of the Witcher series. I did this as an audiobook, though I do have the actual book. So I can actually show this to you because I have an actual copy now. The significant other finally pulled it out of his backpack. So I finished this. I gave it 3 stars. I wasn't as impressed with Blood of Elves as I was with The Last Wish, which is the short story compilation that they recommend you read first before you read this one. This one was, to me, a lot of introductions, and nothing really happened, though there are some really hilarious exchanges between characters. But towards the end, it was just like, there's nothing happening, so I sped up the last kind of bit of the audiobook to get through it. But I did enjoy it enough to keep reading, and I'm still trying to get through as much of it as possible before the series airs in December. The next book is The Vor Game by Louis McMaster Bujold. This is Vorkosigan Saga Book 5, according to the author's official proposed reading order. I got this as an audiobook from my library, and I gave it 5 stars. I really love this series. I'm just slowly devouring the series, and I'm worried I'm going to run out of books before Bujold manages to get another one out. This one focuses on Miles kind of directly after his completion of his military training and kind of his first foray as a military officer. And it kind of just goes hilariously wrong in the way that these books always seem to go hilariously wrong. But I really enjoy reading Miles as a character, and I love McMaster Bujold's world building and the way she puts him in these scenarios and then has him think his way out. So I really liked that one. And that takes me into the next book, which is Cetaganda, which is book 6 in the same series in the author's reading order. Also an audiobook from my library, also a 5-star read. This one is set after the Vor Games. Obviously, if it's in the author's proposed reading order, they tend to go in the chronological order within the world as opposed to publication order. But this one sees Miles go to Cetaganda, into the Cetagandan Empire as a diplomatic envoy from his home planet of Barrayar. Cetaganda is kind of like the Barrayarans' like evil enemy. If you think of like Russia and the United States, it's kind of that tentativeness where Cetaganda would kind of be Russian, Barrayar would be the United States, sort of, kind of ish, not really, but the politics is kind of similar. But he's going to as a diplomatic envoy because the Empress of the Cetagandan Empire has died, and as always, shenanigans ensues. There's a mysterious plot. He's having to figure out the plot, navigate a culture he's not used to. It's great, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with the next book very soon. The next book on my list is The Royal Art of Poison, Filthy Palaces, Fatal Cosmetics, Deadly Medicine, and Murder Most Foul by Eleanor Herman. I own this yes, I own this audiobook, and I gave it 4 stars. I bought this earlier this year after I finished reading a nonfiction book about the Affair of the Poisons, which, as a little background, was a plot to murder a member of the royal household during Louis XIV's reign in France, and it was a whole conniption, whole plot, lots of plotters. The king was at some point threatened, and I had picked this up because I was like, oh, I've read this book about one particular incident, but I want to know more about the general topic. And part of the reason this got 4 stars, it probably would have gotten 5 stars if it hadn't. I felt like the amount of time spent on each section of the book was kind of not the balance that I wanted. So there's 3 sections in the book. There's a discussion of the poisons themselves. So there's a chapter about cosmetics, there's a chapter about the household, there's a chapter about medicine, etc., etc., etc. There's a chapter about cures. And then there's a large middle section where Miss Herman does historical forensics in a way, where she examines his famous historical alleged poisonings and determines and explains what the autopsy showed, if there was any modern investigation, what the investigation showed, what the conclusions were, and kind of presents it out. So, for example, let me see if I can remember an example. One of the examples she gave was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. There's a famous rumor that his rival Salieri poisoned him in his final days, and he actually died of poison. And she goes into here's the background of how we got to this point. Here's how Mozart died. Here are the symptoms that were reported. We aren't able to do any kind of testing because we have no idea where his body was because of the laws in Austria at the time. But based on this, we're pretty sure he died of X, not poisoning. And so that's a large portion of the book. And then the last couple of chapters are dedicated to modern poisoning. And in general, I felt like I wanted more time spent examining and explaining the poisons in the first part of the book, as opposed to having such a long section of historical alleged poisonings in the middle, especially when there are cases where it's relatively public knowledge that these people did not die of poisoning. For example, Edward the Sixth. Yes, I can do math. King Henry VIII's son, where she's like, well, there's a rumor that he might have been poisoned. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure he died of tuberculosis. But it's like some of those stories I felt could have been removed, and we could have spent more time talking about the poisons themselves, what or how they work, maybe why they were in vogue at the time. Just spending more time on those. And I could have dealt without the whole ending section. I'm like, I understand that we're trying to tie this into the modern era and why we should care. But at the same time, I didn't want that in this particular book, which is why it got 4 stars. My next book on my list is Hell House by Richard Matheson. 4 stars, audiobook that I own. 4 stars, I really enjoyed this book. As I stated in my Halloween plan with me, I really enjoyed the movie that is based off this book. It's very psychological. It is very, very very spooky. The reason it got 4 stars for me was I felt like there was an overabundance of adult topics. And by adult topics, I mean things that are not safe to talk about at work and would probably, if I was monetized, get me demonetized on YouTube. But basically, I felt that while I understood the purpose of those sections in the story, especially when the haunting and kind of the history of Hell House are explained, like, they made sense. I just felt like, 1, there was way too much of it, and 2, there was a little too much detail for my liking. But regardless, still a really great book. If you're looking for a really good Halloween book and you're not super squeamish, highly, highly recommend it. And then the last book I finished this month was Selkie's Our Girl's Best Friend by Molly Harper, which is Mystic Bayou Book 3. It's an Audible original. I gave it 4 stars. I really like this series. I really like Molly Harper in terms of the light supernatural romance. I actually felt that the romance was kind of lacking in this book in comparison to the others, but I still really enjoyed it, even though I did figure out who the evil person in the book was relatively early on. But I'm getting to the point where if you've read enough Molly Harper books, you start to see a pattern. So I'm like, I got the pattern now. We got this. All right, moving on to currently reading, which is much longer than I anticipated it being. So the first thing is Heart of Europe, A History of the Holy Roman Empire by Peter Wilson. I've been working on this since I've started doing these videos. I've made 7% progress this month, so I'm now at 40%. I think I've said this before, where basically I listen to this when I don't have something else downloaded onto my phone to listen to, and especially with the last couple of days, I've been using it as a filler as I'm trying to figure out what my next audiobook is going to be. So this will probably be on my list for forever because it is like a 48-hour audiobook, but still, I'm enjoying it as I'm going along. It is broken up by themes, essentially, so he talks about like culture in one section and monarchy in another, and so it's kind of interesting, and you get the cyclical nature where he goes from beginning to end multiple times, but he's focusing on one specific element of the empire. It's definitely not for everybody, but I enjoy it, especially as a casual read. My next one I have on my list is Kingsbane by Claire Legrand. I think I read 10 pages this month. Woohoo, 10 whole pages. This book is becoming a real slog for me. I don't really want to read it anymore. I'm not enthused about picking it up. I'm going to try and bust through it because I'm over halfway there, I think. Maybe just halfway there. But I do want to get this one done because I was really excited for it, and it's probably going to end up being one of my biggest disappointments for the year. All right. Next one. Another actual book. So that's 4 physical books in this. I'm getting better. The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackworth. I really, really love this book. I actually suggested this for my company's online book club, and it's getting... it won, so we're reading this. And like, just to give you an idea, like the way one of the like quotes describes it is the good place meets Law and Order bibliophile crime unit. It's like Terry Pratchett and Jasper Fjord, if you've read any of the Thursday Next book. It's very similar in tone to that, where there's a serious story, but there's lots of levity and hilarity and kind of like absurdism that goes on. I'm over halfway, I think. Yeah, I'd say that's over halfway. Yeah, I'm at 55%. I should have this finished probably in the next couple of days because the reading group's discussion starts in a couple of days, so I need to buzz through this. But I am really enjoying it, and I'll probably do a full review on that soon. All right, my next one is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is the Tales of Duncan Eggs 1 through 3 by George R. R. Martin. This is a prequel book to the Game of Thrones novels. I picked it up because I needed something to read one day, and it happened to be an available ebook, so woo! I'm only 4% into this. I didn't realize how long it was. I thought I was making really good progress, and then I looked at my percentage, and I'm like, dang. Now I remember why I don't read a whole lot of George R. R. Martin, because I really do enjoy his worlds, but his books are so long. But anyway. Next on my reading list is a book I just started today, which is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I'm only 2% in. I picked this up because it was one of those audiobooks available immediately from my library, and I wanted something to listen to. And I also wanted to compare and contrast it to the movie because I really enjoyed the movie as a kind of 21st century rom-com. So far it's similar, but I can see why personally I think I'm going to come out thinking the movie is better. All right, next on my list is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This was my on deck book for last month. I did start it. I'm only 3% of the way in. It's another one where, because I'm reading it as an ebook, I think I'm making a lot of progress, and I'm actually making no progress at all. But I am enjoying it, and I'm hoping I'll finish it soon. And my last currently reading book is The Butchering Art by Joseph Lister, or The Butchering Art, Joseph Lister's Quest to Transform the Grisly World of Victorian Medicine by Lindsay Fritz Harris. Audiobook I own. I started this today at work, and I got a little bit into it. I didn't get super far, but I'm enjoying it so far, just learning the background of John Lister, or Joseph Lister. And kind of, I was really curious because I'm like, I kind of want to learn more, and medicine is one of my interest areas, and especially historical medicine, hence why there's so many books about historical medical ideas. Poison, and let's see, we got poison, we got Europe, we got Lister. So yeah, a lot of my nonfictions end up being about medicine, but I'm really enjoying it so far. And then finally, we are at On Deck. In terms of books on deck, I'm not going to pull an ebook or physical book for this month, just because I have 4 books really, 2 physical books and 2 ebooks that I am trying to bust through, especially this one. I don't want to give myself any more excuses to not read this. So I'm not going to put a physical book on deck this month, in hopes I will finish up some of my lagging ones. In terms of audiobook, my audiobook on deck is Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspur. It's the first book in a 1920s themed murder mystery series, which I'm looking forward to reading. It's been on my list for a while, and we'll see how it goes. All right, thank you all for sticking with me as I sped talk. So to come out, that was 11 books read, 7 books currently being read, and 1 book on deck. With that, I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know what y'all are reading, what you think about any of my quick takes on the things I did finish this month, or if you have any thoughts on the books I'm currently reading. Or if you have any recommendations for what I should be reading next, I'd greatly appreciate you talking to me down in the comments below. Also remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!